The Russian military has undoubtedly improved from this dismal state, but more work still needs to be done. As it is right now, the Russians' military might is somewhere between a fact and a psychological operation. In February 2014, Russian special forces took control of Crimea with admirable accuracy, discipline, and a futuristic appearance. But they faced no opposition and were among the best Russia could muster. Do you think the Russian military is strong? Welcome back to War News Today. With its aircraft, Russia has changed the political landscape of the battle in Syria. Yet, Moscow had to send out its best pilots and even purchase obsolete Turkish ships to equip them to maintain the pace of operations in Syria. Furthermore, testing the new Russian Air Force by hitting a dispersed rebel force with no effective air defense is hardly worthwhile. Moscow has been forced to dispatch battalion tactical groups stitched together from the best companies of soldiers nationwide to Ukraine, where units have been stationed since the summer of 2014. After all, roughly half of Russia's military personnel are conscripts with a one-year commitment. Off the record, Russian officers concede that the majority of them are only useful for 2 to 3 months of that year, from the time of their training to the month of their final demobilization. Moscow has to dock the ships for months after repairing them to send naval squadrons flying the flag worldwide. This also provides them with the tugs to accompany them when they break down. Even though Russia had grand plans for new battleships, the gas turbines that would have been used the most were imported from Ukraine, necessitating a return to the drawing board. In other words, up until now, we have only seen the Russian military at its best under ideal circumstances, and not the full scope of its capabilities or how it would respond to a genuine danger. It's like saying you can evaluate US healthcare or education by visiting the Mayo Clinic. Because of this, we overreact and give the Kremlin far more power than it deserves by viewing Russia's still sizable but stretched out and only partially reformed armed forces as a threat to the world order. Why? This is partly due to people's tendency to overcompensate. Assessments swung to the extreme after Russia's capabilities were unanticipated. The number of deaths in Russia has been shocking. During the most intense fight, casualty reports are often kept in the strictest of confidence, and Russia and Ukraine have concealed their casualty totals. It's a moral issue for both countries. Still, Russia needs to keep its military and civilian populations in the dark about its true cost of its special military operation. Russian casualties are typically estimated to have been approximately 100,000, with 25% of those being combat fatalities. The EU recently stated that Ukraine had also suffered 100,000 losses, and it's thought that the EU's estimate was partly based on intelligence gathering. The EU hastily modified its findings after Ukraine protested. There is no way that Russian casualties aren't substantially greater than this, assuming the report is accurate. Ukraine was on the defensive for most of the conflict. According to basic battlefield math, the side on offense will suffer more casualties than the side on defense in a peer conflict. As a result, Russia is likely to lose 50 to 100% more lives than Ukraine if 100,000 people die. As usual, ingrained corruption is to blame, but poor Russian logistics have also claimed lives other than that who's related to food and water. Both sides need a lot of winter gear now that the winter has arrived. The West could provide Ukraine with all of the winter gear its troops would require since it had foreseen this demand. Early in October, Russia learned that up to 1.5 million winter uniforms had been misplaced when it sought to send winter gear to its forces. Russian soldiers would remove the special wiring from their cars during the Chechnya warfare and sell it in nearby marketplaces. Even knowing most of that weaponry would ultimately be used against their soldiers, they take enormous quantities of ammunition, grenades, and even RPGs and sell them at the neighborhood markets. Any lost equipment would be easily written off due to administrative errors or destroyed in battle, with armory staff completely complicit in the heist or bullied into it. There are also worries that Russian soldiers are not adequately nourished or outfitted for the cold weather. In one video that's gone viral, a Ukrainian drone demonstrates that there are Russian soldiers who appear to be suffering from colds. In the video, a Ukrainian drone drops a grenade upon a group of Russian soldiers who are sleeping close together. So here we are. Just close your eyes and make a wish, then go ahead and click that subscribe button and your wish will come true. Try it now. Only one of the troops tries to escape the hole when the grenade bursts and the others hardly exhibit any signs of life. Several commentators have called attention to the subpar winter clothing the soldiers are sporting in the video and noted that it would take extraordinary circumstances such as hypothermia for someone to fail to react when a grenade explodes almost next to them. Lack of protective gear will be considerably more damaging to Russian soldiers during the winter, especially as Vladimir Putin and his generals prepare a big attack to push Ukraine back. Yet, Russian equipment needs to do better. Soon after the conflict began, it was evident that Russia's equipment stocks had suffered significantly due to inefficiency and corruption. Because of one catastrophic fault, the tires on vehicles were infamously abandoned on the side of the road. Tire rot, which happens when rubber deteriorates from exposure to the sun, was evident in numerous captured automobiles. Regular vehicle rotation ensures that one side of the vehicle doesn't always face the sun to prevent this. Yet, poor quality Chinese tires also impacted Soviet vehicles. One well-known example is abandoning a multi-million-dollar air defense vehicle due to its worn-out tires. It turned out that many Russian cars were equipped with cheap Chinese tires that were not intended for something other than the models on which they were mounted. In addition, unlike Western manufacturers, Russian tires were not X-rayed and examined for structural flaws that might impair their performance. But since the Chinese produce perfectly decent tires for their military vehicles, this isn't a case of them intentionally creating poor tires. Instead, Major Koruptovich is pocketing the price difference between the intended, high-quality and cheaper tires. The once dreaded tank forces of Russia have performed terribly in Ukraine. The anticipated number of Russian tank losses is 1,500, an alarming tank loss rate for modern power. If sanctions are withdrawn tomorrow, it would take less time to deploy lighter forces. While discussing Russian reconstruction, it's crucial to remember that the country continues to be the second largest exporter of weaponry in the world and has excellent industrial potential. But even that depends on several circumstances, not the least of which is how badly the Russian economy has been hit by sanctions, with the effects only expected to worsen over time. Russia's GDP is predicted to contract by 3% this year alone, and the country's inflation rate might increase to 14% or more in 2013. More alarming is that the EU has banned most Russian energy exports and set a price restriction on Russian oil at $60 per barrel. Even if the rest of the world is not bound by this cap, many of its allies in the West are expected to uphold it. More importantly, anyone importing Russian oil via Western infrastructure or on vessels insured by Western companies is required by law to adhere to this price cap. The decision will significantly impact Russia's finances because the country's economy is heavily dependent on the energy industry, with up to 60% of government revenue coming from the sale of energy exports. Sanctions on the technology items required for modern weapons make force reconstitution even more challenging and time-consuming. Yet, the issue with Russian armor extends beyond the challenges associated with its replacement. When confronted with contemporary threats, Soviet tanks have proven to be inherently flawed. Modern anti-tank missiles frequently engage targets from the top, rising into the air upon launch and directly striking the tank's turret's roof armor. Russian tanks have a serious issue with this because their autoloaders employ a carousel mechanism to store the ammo that surrounds the turret. This means that if a direct hit penetrates the armor, the ammunition will explode, instantly destroying the crew and sending the turret flying. While facing enemy tanks, this might not be a major issue, but the spread of sophisticated ATGMs on the battlefield today has turned Russian tanks into death traps for their crews. Strangely, because of the ATGM threats, a Soviet tank may be safer today than light infantry in a battle against another tank. What do you think about them? Are they powerful? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, like and subscribe to us here at War News Today, and you can watch some other videos on our channel too. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.